Good evening, everybody. I'm on the wrong page. Starting right. Okay, so the board met in, where am I? Sweet Jesus. I will now call to order the meeting of November 7th, 2024. We acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Chumash, Tongva, Fernandeño, Tatavaim, and First Nations on which we are learning, educating, and living. On that note, happy Native American History Month to everybody. Dr. Parama, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Please stand. Put your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, God, sure. Ms. Quinterio, please take roll call at this time.
Member Tabbitt?
Here.
Clerk Sponsor Kamkar?
Present.
Vice President Agakanian?
Here.
President Weisberg?
Present. Reporting on closed session by a vote of 4-0. The board accepted the resignation of the Director of Food Services on terms stated in a written agreement. Is there anything else I needed to? I don't think so. Yes, thank you. We also took action on item 3B with a vote of 4-0 in favor of the committee's recommendation. Moving to 6, adjustments to the agenda. I know that we have one adjustment to the agenda, which is 13B. 13E. A? It is 13A. We can remove that because we just read out the action taken and closed. Any other adjustments to the agenda? Okay. Items for future agendas. I have 2. I'll tell you, since you asked. My first one is I would love to get an update on where we are in regards to meeting with boroughs and BHS ASB to talk about ways in which we can make the bathrooms safer. I know we spoke about this a couple of board meetings ago when some concerns were raised by our fabulous student board members. And I'd like to make sure that we're continuing conversations so that we can put action behind any recommendations that they have. Please.
If the board agrees, when I went to Muir for the, do you remember that class's name? I'm so sorry. The
Changemakers.
Changemakers. One of their groups was on bathroom safety. Could we maybe, at the middle school level too, include them?
It'd be great to get whatever presentation. Yeah, more student voices, the
see
better.
Their presentation or something
Sure.
along those lines?
Sure. I mean, I absolutely think we should. I do want to prioritize our high schools since those issues seem to be the most prevalent. But any student input is going to put us in a better
They've
space.
done some research, and so
Yeah.
they might be a step ahead.
Absolutely. I got a second item. And I know Dr. Macias, you've been working on that, so I just like to get an update on where we are. The other item that I'd like to agendize, if possible, for the next meeting, that first one is when Dr. Macias feels it's appropriate. So one of the biggest concerns we heard raised before the election in regards to the bond was that people were concerned in wanting to make sure that we had really high quality labor attached to the projects that we utilize bond funding for. And obviously, the board wholeheartedly agrees with that. We want skilled labor. We want projects that last. We want to create safe spaces for our students. So to this end, I want to agendize, I guess, a conversation, but also potential action in regards to creating a workforce agreement at our next meeting in order to ensure that this level of skilled labor is utilized and that we adhere to our policy of authentic DEI and making sure that the people that we utilize are treated fairly, justly, and equitably.
Yeah, that is not a problem.
Great. Those are mine. Dr. Agakanian?
Thank you, Madam President. So I know during the last meeting, we talked about concerns for driving, turning illegally and around Muir, and I know we were going to go to the city's transportation committee. This being the end of the year, almost maybe in January, I would like to see if we can have someone from transportation committee, someone from the city, to come and give us a report what the concerns or issues are. I know Muir was one. I know someone else brought up another school. Huerta is a concern. So maybe we can get something in terms of how we can build an overall plan for the district for 2025 to see how we can work with the transportation committee and law enforcement to see how we can address some of these issues. Because it's not getting better. I'm hearing more and more complaints. So yes. Well, that's what I said, a district-wide plan for 20.
Sorry.
Well, and I think we've.
Cindy wants me to say that in the
Oh,
mic.
sorry. Go ahead.
It shouldn't be one or two schools. It should be all of our schools.
Agreed.
I think one of the things that we mentioned was that like we mostly talk about elementary when we're usually talking about pedestrian safety because most of those students, more of those students walk to school because they're just closer geographically. But I think, so this was much more a conversation to make sure we're focusing on secondary, right? Does that sound right, Dr. Kanian?
And in addition to that, Dr. Agakanian, the last 2 nights I've been out and about in the community between like 5 and 6, there's the hot Christmas present or whatever for this year is going to be e-bikes. They've gone down to like $600.
Yeah.
And I say that because I've seen the same 2 young men whipping down the street in heavy traffic as if they were a car, and they can't be more than, well, I'm getting older, so everybody looks younger, but I'd say around 14 or so. So it's something I'd like to see included in that conversation too.
And as I said earlier, I mean, starting with secondary, but I want this to be a 2025 plan for the whole district. Just working with the city, with the Transportation Commission, trying to figure out what are the best practices. But also, yes, I do understand your concern. I agree with you. The problem with them also is they're quiet. You don't see them coming. The e-bike or the electric bikes, they're extremely, if you can turn it off or on, apparently some of them, the noise. It makes a noise if you want to, but it's fake. So, but some of them are super quiet, and I've seen them go up and down the streets, even in our neighborhoods, and I think that's another concern parents have. But I think also, I would like to, the safety issues and all the stuff that we have concerning some parents, it's also, they're afraid they don't want their kids to walk to the school. So maybe we address all of this and it's safer, then students can also be confident enough to walk to their own school. Some crossings will be, so I can tell you certain crossings, I wouldn't want my kid to pass that crossing, right? So I think in general, just a bigger plan, addressing this, promoting healthier practices like walking, and even addressing some of the new technology. It is getting cheaper and cheaper, and it's gonna get cheaper, the bikes. And you don't need a license for those apparently, right? So if that's something we can bring forward, that'd be great.
Any other future agenda items?
I just like to attach myself to other people, so thank you for letting me do that.
You're welcome, Octopus. We will move to item 8A, our fabulous student representatives. We will begin with Rose from Burbank High School.
Good evening, Superintendent Paramo, esteemed board members, President Weisberg, Vice President Dr. Agakanian, Board Clerk Kamkar, Board Member Tebet, and all attendees. It is my pleasure to greet you this evening and provide you with the latest updates from Burbank High School. Last Friday, we celebrated our homecoming football game against John Burroughs High School, a highly anticipated event that culminated in a resounding victory for our team. This achievement fills us with immense pride, and we are excited to support them as they prepare for their upcoming CIF game against Monrovia High, which is scheduled for tomorrow. In our Visual and Performing Arts Department, the Burbank High Choir hosted a delightful Night of Magic on November 2nd. Despite the weather challenges faced, the event was a tremendous success. Our talented choirs captivated the audience with performances from Once on This Island and In the Heights, creating a truly enchanting atmosphere. Looking ahead, our Unleashed Dance team is set to present a show titled Dancing in the Dark on November 22nd and 23rd, starting at 7 p.m. Additionally, I am pleased to announce that the junior class will be reviving the beloved Dancing with the Staff event on January 16th. This fundraiser has consistently proven to be successful, raising substantial funds for both the dance program and the junior class. Furthermore, just yesterday, the junior class hosted a fundraiser at Chipotle to bolster their efforts in raising money for the class of 2026. As we turn our attention to our seniors, I would like to inform you that our grad night has been scheduled for May 9th at Disney California Adventure Park. In addition, the senior panoramic photos will be taken on November 13th, and we encourage students to express their individual styles by wearing fun shirts or accessories to match as long as they adhere to our approval guidelines to capture a memorable moment. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to your continued support as we celebrate and engage with many exciting events and achievements at Burbank High School.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Just have it. When is the next game from Burbank High? And they're playing
Monrovia.
Monrovia. You just said it, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. I just remember she mentioned something. So,
At Monrovia.
and if they win, what's next?
Depends who else wins that night. They'll know on Sunday.
I
I can
we're
let you
talking
know the
maybe
following
state
week.
championship, right?
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. One can hope, but you never know.
Thank you so much. Next up, the fabulous Vivian from Monterey.
Good evening, Board President Weisberg, distinguished members of the board, Superintendent Paramo, district staff, and our audience. I am honored to speak with you today to highlight some of the exciting events taking place at our school. One of the most impactful programs we have continued this year is a financial literacy course taught by Gain Federal Credit Union. Every Wednesday during our economics class with Mr. Lloyd, representatives from Gain Credit Union come to teach us essential financial skills. From budgeting and saving to understanding credit and loans, these lessons are equipping us with the knowledge we need to make informed financial decisions in the future. This experience has been incredibly beneficial, and students at Monterey are grateful for the partnership with Gain Credit Union. Thank you to Ms. Lori and Ms. Jasmine for coming to teach us each week. In addition to our financial literacy program, Monterey High School has also hosted several colleges to provide our students with valuable information about post-secondary education opportunities. Pasadena Community College, Los Angeles Valley College, Glendale Community College, and LA Trade Tech have all visited our campus to share insights about their programs, admissions, processes, and campus life. These sessions have been instrumental in helping us understand the various pathways available to us after high school. We were also thrilled to welcome students from the Independent Learning Academy and Magnolia Park to these events. Their participation added a diverse perspective and enriched the discussions. The turnout for these college presentations were fantastic, demonstrating the strong interest and engagement from our student body. These partnerships are just a few examples of how Monterey High School is committing to providing a well-rounded education and preparing us for the future. We are grateful for the support of the Burbank Board of Education in making these opportunities possible. Thank you for your time and continued support. Do you have any questions?
No, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And a big thank you to Gain for that awesome financial literacy class. I really wish I would have gotten one of those. Someone would have said, please don't go take the credit card that they're offering you at your college. Yeah, don't do it. It is too late. I did that. Yes. Looks like this evening our union leadership has taken a much-deserved night off. We wish them well and look forward to seeing them at future meetings. 8C, reports from the superintendent.
Thank you very much. I want to take a minute tonight to thank the Burbank community for supporting the ABC school bond measure. Your commitment to the school district and to our kids is an honor that I do not take for granted. I will uphold my obligation to spend the bond money appropriately and wisely, and under the supervision of the School Facilities Oversight Committee, which is comprised of local community members. I want to take a moment to thank both of our unions, both CSEA and BTA, Alex Moore, our CTA rep, the Burbank Association of School Administrators, the Chamber of Commerce, the Board of Realtors, thank you, Harry, the mayor, the vice mayor, the Armenian National Committee of America, the ABC Bond Committee, our consultants, and everyone who supported the bond effort. We could not have done this without the community support. I'm very much humbled, and I appreciate it, and we will not let you down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will move on to 9A, request to address the board. Seeing no one. And no virtual speakers. We will move on. We will close the public comment period for this and skip 9B and 9C and move, just don't know what to do. And move to, this is literally I just want to say the first time in 4 years. 4 years. Could you? Could you just put on a mustache and, obviously, kidding aside, we welcome all community feedback. This is just, I think we're all probably tired from this week and look forward to hearing from our community members in the coming weeks. Item 10, reports to the board. 10A, I'm going to introduce the fabulous Andy Cantwell, who's going to talk about surplus property procedures.
It's working. Good evening, President Weisberg, board members, Dr. Paramo, colleagues and community. This evening we have a presentation from one of our attorneys, Constance Schwint, with Atkinson Andelson. In the spring, we made the very challenging decision to close the Community Day School, CDS. As we explore the potential uses of that property, some consideration has come forward for exploring whether or not we're the right users of that property long term, or whether we should be exploring alternative uses for that space. It is in such a critical and important space within the community of Burbank. In order for the district to be able to explore alternative uses for that space, there are some legal requirements for a committee to be assembled and ultimately to look at the property, look at the needs of the district, and to make a recommendation to you. So this evening, we have brought forward one of our attorneys to give a presentation on this process, and after the presentation, you will have the opportunity to consider adopting a resolution to formally call for this committee. Because it is a critical process for the community to engage in, we felt it didn't make sense to only restrict the consideration to CDS, because we do have another property, the parking lot right near us here, that we purchased nearly 25 years ago, that we also felt was appropriate to consider charging this committee to look at and explore whether or not its current use is the best use, both in the short and long term for our district. So with that, I want to welcome Constance. Come on up. PowerPoint, if we can get the PowerPoint on the screen. There we go.
All right, perfect.
Here you go.
Thank you so much. Should I use that or that? Guess we can get rid of this. Okay, no problem. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I am very happy to be here, and my name is Constance Schwint. I've been with Atkinson Andelson since 2003. 16 of those years I've been a partner. I've always done property for K-12 and community college districts, as well as a private sector practice as well. I've worked with a lot of districts on their surplus property procedures. and it can be a time-consuming process. But before we go into the whole slideshow that we have for you, I always like to start out by explaining the importance of this, especially this first step, the 7-Eleven committee. A lot of times districts will look at the process and think, we've just got to check these boxes. Let's just get through it. But there's a really good reason for the 7-Eleven committee. This is your opportunity to understand what your community needs, wants, and I'm going to use the word tolerate because it comes up in one of the statutes and always raises a few eyebrows. What's meant by that? And at the end of the day, you really do want to find out what the toleration level is. You don't want at the 11th hour as you're approving a sale or a lease to have everybody come out of the woodwork with pitchforks and say, how did this happen? We had no idea. This was unexpected. You'll know if you do follow what the committee suggests, you probably won't have as big of an issue. But then if you have a good reason to do something different, you'll go into it with your eyes wide open. So with that, let's see if I can. All right. So this is an overview of the topics that we'll discuss. And throughout this presentation, if you want to interrupt at any point, ask me questions, I strongly encourage that. We can make it more of a dialogue, whatever's going to be the most helpful for you to have a comfort level with the process. First step, forming the committee. The committee will eventually have a report that they bring to you to consider. We'll discuss this in more detail, but you'll make a decision at that point if you want to follow a traditional bid process where you have an auction and there's kind of less control and no negotiation versus establishing an RFP process where you can negotiate. Sale or lease, of course, comes up, what you want to do with the property. And then ultimately there's a final agreement. And then use of funds, it's very important to understand what your limitations are because that can help decide if you want to pursue a sale or a lease. All right, your 7-Eleven advisory committee, it's called 7-Eleven informally because it's composed of a minimum of 7 members because they have to fit certain categories of your community, but no more than 11. We've had districts that have insisted on having many more than 11, and in those instances, we've had them do kind of subgroups. You've had your main group, so there are ways to work with what your needs are. We'll go over the duties on the next slide, but they are very specific duties that are set forth by the statute. They are subject to the Brown Act. So the same agenda requirements, all of those things that you as a board have to follow, the committee will have to follow as well. Conflict of interest, you have to make sure that, and this is already in the documents you have for your application for your committee members, you don't want anybody that owns property within 500 feet of the school because that would be a conflict of interest. Public hearings, that's part of the process that they have to follow. When they have their meetings, they'll have public hearings, and then they ultimately give you a recommendation. All right, the membership. Again, at least 7, and these are the 7 categories. The first category, that's another one that I often will get questions of, how do we find somebody that fits all of that? It's not really a specific person that fits everything. That's an impossibility. But you want to overall be looking at your committee and making sure that it's not focused on just one aspect of your community. So that's something that is going to be different for every district. Member of your business community, could be a business owner, somebody that's a manager, landowners or renters, so self-explanatory, teachers of the district, administrator of the district, a parent of a student, and someone that has expertise. It doesn't have to be property laws, but it could be related to property, it could be environmental issues, it could be entitlements, just something that gives a little bit of an extra knowledge to some of these areas. And this is helpful then to make sure that not only is your committee pulling in information from your community when they hold these meetings and public hearings, but then they individually are bringing something different to the conversation and to your report. So their basic duties are, and this is where district staff will be helpful in providing information, to review enrollment and other data. They're going to be looking at those specific properties, but they're really going to be looking at the properties as a whole of the district. They want to understand, especially if it sounds like one of your properties, there's already been a school closure, so they're not going to be looking at it in terms of that, but sometimes that is the case. Holding hearings for community input. The statute doesn't say how many, it just says plural. So we always recommend have a minimum of 2 hearings. Sometimes committees have chosen to have more than 2 hearings because of something particular about a property or a situation that they just feel that there would be a benefit to giving the public more of an opportunity to speak and give their opinion. Here's the language that the word tolerance is straight from the statute that says to determine the tolerance of the use of the property. So that goes to what's helpful for the board to really understand what they could be walking into when they make their decisions. And then they provide a report to the board recommending the uses. The board is not required to follow what the report says. You accept the report, but in accepting the report doesn't mean you're accepting everything to do. So you always have your own determination. Okay, so potential recommendations they could make for the properties: keep it as is, pursue a lease. They can put more specifics as to long-term, short-term, all kinds of variations that can go with that. Pursue a sale. There's also a sale with an option to lease. Or pursue an exchange. Exchange actually doesn't require the 7-Eleven process or any of the surplus property procedures. It's outside of it. In terms of the standard process, that, as I mentioned, goes to a bid hearing. We'll go in more detail on a different slide. If you do the waiver process, the RFP process where you can negotiate the agreements, that takes a little bit longer to get to that point because you have to get a waiver from the State Board of Education. And there's a very set process that they have for that, and I believe it's only 2 times a year that they will review those waiver requests. And again, your report's accepted, but you don't have to follow the recommendations. Okay, when they complete their duties and they present their report to you, I don't want to repeat myself too much. You don't have to follow it, just accept it. And then you would, and you can do it in the same meeting that you accept the report. Sometimes districts choose to spread it out a little bit for their own reasons. A resolution that would declare the property is not needed and is surplus. In that resolution, we would also include that it's exempt from the Surplus Lands Act. Surplus Lands Act is a law that I think it was 2018 or 2019, that impacts a lot of public agencies for selling their property. School districts, K through 12, are in a pretty good situation because if it's property that is subject to an advisory committee like 7-Eleven committee, you're exempt. So all we have to do is add a line into that resolution that it's exempt. We would also if you want to have, do the RFP process, or at least have the option to do an RFP process, we would recommend that that also be included in the resolution, which also means we want the 7-Eleven committee to discuss waiver, put that in their report, just so that you have that option. And then the resolution would authorize staff to take action and see the process through.
Sorry, one quick question.
Yes.
So when you're talking about the resolution, you mean the resolution that goes along with the 7-Eleven committee report, not like the one we're voting on tonight? Okay, got it.
Absolutely.
Just making sure.
Yes. Tonight's resolution just forms the committee, and I probably should have noted that earlier already. So the decision that you don't have to make it until you get that resolution that declares it surplus. And you can even actually do in parallel track if you really can't decide which direction you want to go. We've seen that happen before. But the standard process, you are limited, you don't negotiate, so you have to take the high bidder, which sounds like that's fine. We want the most money. Pretty straightforward when it's the sale of property. So it's not a bad idea to do that unless there's something about the property where it's just really challenging to put it out to bid. And you can see that for different reasons. And maybe it's a property where there's just, because I have seen that happen, where we've gone out to bid and it's just a peculiar property and nobody showed. And that's very disappointing to throw a party and have nobody show up. And in those instances, getting a waiver has turned out to be more successful. Yes.
Backtracking just a bit. I was going to wait to the end, but I'll forget.
Okay.
In regards to the committee,
Yes.
do the people have to live in Burbank? Because we have a huge faction of teachers and admin that don't live in Burbank but work in Burbank.
Okay. If they are a teacher in the district and they don't live in Burbank, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does that apply to any profession, or just you have to teach in Burbank? Like if you owned a small business in Burbank but you don't live in Burbank, could
That's
you be
fine too.
So you just essentially you have to have meaningful employment in Burbank.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I
Great
have
question.
a question along those lines.
Yes.
So it's very clear what the complexion of the committee should look like. How do we solicit participation? Are there rules regarding that? Is it an interview process? Do we accept people who are interested? Can we solicit? How does that work?
Great question. So the Education Code does not set forth a process for that. But what we've typically recommended and seems to work well is to have an application process. And in that application, there's a lot of questions asked, and they have the option to identify themselves for a specific category, and an option to identify themselves, well, actually, they have to identify themselves for a category, but in terms of giving information about their ethnicity or age or anything like that, that part's optional.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
That will
Yeah.
give.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So these recommendations from the committee members from the community, legally, they're just an advisory committee, right? So
Correct.
they're legally not bound for any future,
Yes. 100% correct.
just for clarification.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, where did it go? I had an idea. You mentioned that even though we've got particular properties in mind that the committee might be looking at kind of the overall kind of property envelope of the district, how much can we kind of like put a fence around, here's what we want you to make a recommendation about,
Yes.
the specific recommendation about?
Yes. And so those parameters will be there, that these are the two properties that the report will be based on. But in terms of getting the background information, that's where looking at information of overall enrollment data, and which can include information about the other properties. So it's more to give them background and context as they're focusing on these two properties. Sometimes committees do try and go a little further than they're able to do. And so that's where staff or legal counsel can kind of rein it back in.
But for like any additional properties, like so.
So the report and the committee's charge, as laid out in declaration, or as in the resolution, is focused on those two properties. But an example would be CDS used to be used as Miller Kindergarten. So it would make sense that one thing that they would want to look at is what does the elementary enrollment look like in this area? If we know it's previously served as a kindergarten, should the district hold on to this property because we may need surplus space at Miller once again and have it used as a kindergarten in the future at some point. So in that respect, they may want to look at district enrollment information, but as it impacts these properties.
I don't know who can answer this question, or if I'm sure one of you can, or both. Charters. So I know that there's carve-outs where they don't even have to bid. Is that correct? So I am concerned about a timeline in relationship to a charter school sort of swooping in. And I don't think they obviously can't do that with the parking lot, but
Right.
certainly with CDS, that's a serious concern.
Okay. Do you guys have charters?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that is a potential. If you, there's not a requirement, though, to be offering it to a charter.
I think that was my question. Is there, I know that,
There-
is there
There
any?
used to be.
I was going to say, correct me if things have changed because I haven't been through this process in about 7 years. It used to be that
This is what I thought.
charter schools that have a school-based ADA in excess of 80 can have priority rights during the windows of
Yeah,
negotiation.
there's certain windows. Mhm.
This property happens to only have 4 classrooms, and so the likelihood that there would be, even if that still is the case, a charter school that an ADA of 80 would require an enrollment near 90 for a charter school of that form.
Okay.
To have a charter school that has an enrollment of 90 but only needs 4 classrooms, that is a classroom-based program, is almost impossible to imagine because they couldn't go beyond really 100 students. So it really different than a larger comprehensive campus because of how small this one is. At least the laws that existed a few years ago was so limited in what those priority rights would extend to that really is not a major consideration for this property.
Great.
And I think it's sunsetted.
And even then,
Check.
they would still need to, there are other entities that fall under that kind of priority window, is that right? And they would still need to compete with them on price, presumably.
Oh, okay, so you're talking about the notice process when we get to the, they would, yeah, you're not required to sell it at a discount.
Right.
You still, any of the entities that are getting notice, you can negotiate with them, and if you don't come up with price that, or you think you can do better going out to bid, then you just do that.
I think my concern was grounded in that obligation, so I'm glad there's been some clarification there. Thank you.
All right.
Slides, please.
Did we lose our? Okay, did I go back? I think I skipped ahead, hang on. Okay, maybe that was where we were at. Okay, standard process, goes to the highest bidder. Yeah, you can't negotiate if you're putting out for bid and you're only going with if you decide to do a lease, that's where, don't go to bid with a lease, get a waiver, takes longer to get the waiver, but to go out to bid on a lease makes no sense. The one and only time I did that was for a community college district, and there was bidding going on, but lease terms are so complex, it was just almost silly, and the board rejected everything and we got a waiver.
Which would, but, sorry. So just out of curiosity during the introduction, so what,
Yes.
have you done any districts close to us or in the LA County area, your law firm, when it comes to this process?
Yeah, we've worked with a lot of districts in LA County,
Examples?
Orange County.
Can you give me an example from LA County?
LA County, let's see, we worked with Lawndale, trying to think who else in LA County. Lawndale, Glendale, Pasadena.
That's good enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see.
If I may just add a little color here.
Yeah.
So again, one of my former districts, we went through this process. If you know Ojai, its reputation is true. It is an incredible community. They don't allow chain stores in the town. It is a very desirous to maintain a lot of its unique culture and community. So that community made very clear that seeking the highest bid for a district property was so antithetical to anything that Ojai represents, because they would not want us to just sell it to, the next Ojai Valley Inn, some, large hotelier who was going to make that whole beautiful downtown property into a hotel. They would want it to be something that matches and aligns with community priorities. And so for us, it was not going to be something that made sense to pursue highest bid. It made sense to go through a waiver process. So that's one example, whether you're selling or leasing, where a waiver and being able to control some of the parameters where the community could say, we want any response has to include some element of housing, or any response must include some element of why, you insert the priority for a community. So that might be an example of why you'd want to pursue a waiver and an RFP process.
You mentioned that the waiver process takes a little bit of extra time. Can you talk a little bit about, who are you asking for a waiver? From whom are you asking a waiver?
That's from the State Board of Education, and there's an online waiver that you submit, and actually I'll go ahead and switch to that slide. That's okay. Jump up a little bit. Thought we had a waiver slide here. You know what, that's okay. That's all right. So with the waiver process, there's a few requirements when you do the online request. They want to make sure that you've met with your bargaining units, and they just want to know what their position is. And even if their position is, nope, we don't want you to do a waiver, that doesn't mean it doesn't really matter what the position is. You just need to show that you've been engaged with them. Not that it doesn't matter. Let me rephrase that one. You can still move forward. So you don't have to coerce them into agreeing if they don't want to agree. That's a better way to phrase it. Your 7-Eleven committee needs to have been involved and weigh in on that. So we just make that part of the discussion with them to start with. And then they have a limited period of time to review it. So there's twice a year, I think once in May and once in November. And so depending on when you submit it, that controls a little bit of how long that it takes. Sometimes they come back and they want a little bit more information, so there can be a little bit of back and forth on that. They also you also need to have a public hearing. And so because that'll be part of the resolution, when you, not for forming the committee, but when you get the report from the board and you have a resolution for declaring it surplus, if you include waiver in that, part of that meeting will have a public hearing specifically on waiver. So then you get the community input. So you've got the collective bargaining, 7-Eleven committee weighing in, and then the public hearing. And so those are the specific things, and you can waive, really all we'd be waiving would be the bid process itself. You can't waive the notice to the various entities. That's not waivable, and you can't waive the use of proceeds. And then it typically, they'll require you to have a competitive process, RFP, and then they'll usually include language that says you have to, 60 days after receiving your RFP proposals, you have to make a decision. So they don't want it to linger on and on. Usually, when you get the approval, it'll say 1 year, or I think sometimes I've seen 2 years, but typically it's just good for 1 year. So if you don't move on fast on it, you might have to go back and get it reapproved. So, all right. So for the competitive process, that is something where you can set, if you want to move quickly, you can set the public hearing date for the auction. In that resolution, we are declaring it surplus. You hold that, you open the bids in public and read them out. And then you call for oral bids, and sometimes this can be pretty fun and exciting. The first oral bid has to be 5% higher than the highest written proposal. And it's been a little while, but there was a time period where, just because of what was going on in the economy, there was some exciting ones where you got so much more than you ever anticipated. And those are the times when when going out to bid really does make sense instead of getting the waiver. Because then people get caught up in the excitement, and I've been in ones that went on for 3 hours because we're letting people take time. Go, call your partners, come back in, put up something higher, and so that's really well worth it. When the economy's such, or when the property values are, there's not much competition, then it can have almost sort of a chilling effect on the price to do a bid hearing, because people are looking around and it's either pretty empty, or they're kind of coming in low and, or under the minimum bid. That's the worst. So in those instances, it can be better to just go for the waiver so that you don't have that public competition going on.
But you can
Yes.
set a minimum bid.
You have to set a minimum,
And
in fact.
if people are coming in below that, you don't actually have to accept it, but you have
Correct.
to accept the highest bid over your minimum.
Yes.
Got it.
So if you at least hit the minimum, then you have two choices. You either accept the highest or you reject all. You can't pick and choose. If everything comes in under the minimum bid, we always have in the bid package that you can have that there's discretion to accept non-conforming bids. So if there's no minimum bid hit and it's all non-conforming, then you can pick and choose the best one. But you still can't be doing the negotiating. And you're also looking at something that's under your minimum bid. So. Okay, so we've already talked a lot about the RFP process. You get permission from the State Board of Education. Make sure in describing it, I didn't miss anything that's on that slide. Yeah, so you get the approval from the state. Typically those are, I can't think of anywhere we haven't gotten it. Sometimes they'll come back and ask questions, but I think we always get them. And then when you send out the RFP, you can choose one and negotiate with them. You can have a couple you're interested in and negotiate with both of them, and you have discretion to do that. The board can meet in closed session and go over the terms and see what the proposals are and go back and negotiate some more. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. And as was already noted, a lot of other considerations and terms can be brought into the process. We've already gone through this slide. This is the details of what you do to submit the waiver. Yes.
So, where I work, we're dealing with something similar right now, except they just discovered a lot of, they're not passing the environmental impact because they're finding more stuff in the ground.
Yeah.
So even though the property was purchased, no one really at the beginning looked at it.
Okay.
Now they're finding all these extra expenses. So I'm just curious because, Burbank, I've worked on projects in Burbank before, like with Costco Burbank, but there were a lot of, we had to use Brown Act field money to replace the soil because it was contaminated.
Right.
So I'm just curious when it comes to this, in terms of liability, legal matters, and the process itself. Is it the person who wins the bid has to go through it, or we have to provide all this information?
Okay,
before?
that's a great question. So really part of what we're going to be wanting to do before we even put it out to bid is have a good understanding ourselves of the property. So if there are not already phase ones or anything like that we have on these properties, I don't know what the sense of the environmental condition is of these properties. One of them was a school, so should be good. But there, you never know. There'll be a due diligence period. And certainly one of the things that we always make sure of is that the district liability is cut off, does not continue on after the property is sold. The proposed buyer will have the ability to do their investigations and make their determinations. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Councillor. And then the second one is, what about properties that are crossing city property as well? Kind of like, one of them, isn't it, correct me if I'm wrong, it's kind of in the, half of it is connected to a Burbank Park? So what if a property is proximity too close to another city property, like a, or is a joint agreement where it's part of it's used for park space with the city?
I'm not sure I completely understand the question. So
we have a property that it's ours, but then part of it is in joint usage with the city.
Oh, okay. All right. So if you're jointly using your,
No, like a,
Are you referring to CDS, the
Yes,
road?
yes.
It's only that, the easement, that's just the pathway that separates the two parcels.
but still.
So yeah, it'd be a condition that would have to be,
the
communicated as
question.
part of the bid package, yep. absolutely.
yeah, so if there's an easement, then that's something that's going to run with the land. And so that's something that the buyer would be looking at to see, well, are the easements that are on the property, are they going to be acceptable? Are they going to be an issue with what I propose that I'm going to want to do with it? So that'll be something that that's their problem to see if that works. And if they want to get rid of an easement and negotiate that out with the other party to the easement, they can take steps to do that. Yep. All right. Okay. So this is, sorry, getting my bearings back here where we're at. So still just comparing what the benefits are to one versus the other. So you have the flexibility with the RFP to negotiate. And so it really will depend on the properties as to whether or not using a bid process or an RFP process will make the most sense. And there are a couple of charts that just kind of put that into one snapshot for you. But those are showing the comparison of the process that we've already discussed.
And so as part of the report out from the 7-Eleven committee, is part of the recommendation going to be, if we were to go the RFP route, these are the things you should consider in terms of possible use? Like how detailed do those reports? I don't know that I've ever seen a 7-Eleven committee report. So how
Sometimes they
detailed
do go
get?
into a lot of detail. They don't have to, but particularly if that's something that the board really wants to get some information about, that's where you communicating what your goals are with the report in advance, I think, is helpful too, so that we make sure that the level of detail that you're looking for. Committees typically do like to give a lot of, we want you to do this, we want you to, there'll be a lot, probably will be a lot of specifics, that probably won't be an issue, but if there are really things that you want to know about, pass that on. And this next slide gives the benefits of either. You don't need to do the more lengthy waiver process for the traditional bid. Not so much of an analysis of the bids, just making sure if they're conforming or not. Yes, potentially you can reach more people with a public auction the way it's advertised, whereas the request, the RFP process is often a little bit more targeted. Biggest benefit for the RFP process is to be able to negotiate. Like I mentioned, you can pursue both concurrently. If you're worried about time, but you really don't know which direction you want to go because of the length of time the waiver process takes, that can be useful. And ultimately, whether you go to the RFP or you go to a bid auction, the final agreement will always come back to the board. So you'll always have the ability at the very end to say yes or no.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
And apologies if you mentioned this at the beginning, but what's a typical timeline? Like how long? I know that it varies wildly.
Yeah.
But is there any sort of general sense of a typical timeline for this process?
Because each process can vary quite a bit. If you were to try and make it as short a time period as possible, I've typically told districts, you can do it in 3 months. That's going to have everything teed up.
Yeah.
So that's probably the shortest.
I think I'm interested in
But
getting it
more-
right, not speeding it up.
Yeah, so I think that a more typical, not drawn out one, from start to finish of getting your committee formed, and let's just say you're going through the bid process, I would say about 6 months, because a certain amount of time to
Yeah,
go
si-
through
6
the
months is
documents
what I've
and-
seen. Again, I have 2 former districts I personally have experience with that went through this process. One was looking at schools that were currently in use. And so they had 15 meetings, and you can imagine
Sure.
those were very
Spicy.
engaged
Spicy.
meetings. Another district had already closed a alternative high school, and they ended up having 4 meetings total.
Okay.
And so it really does vary greatly depending on the type of property and the analysis. In the case with us, again, looking at CDS, which is a very small footprint of a campus that's already been closed and a parking lot, I'd imagine it's going to be closer to the shorter end range of the committee's deliberations. That doesn't mean necessarily the overall process will be accelerated significantly.
And how long do you usually, so from the time that you post, you can apply to be a part of this committee to when you close the application process? How long do you usually leave that open, would you suggest?
I would recommend giving that a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then after that, that's when we review, so we don't consider
You can make
applications.
2 weeks to a month.
Okay, great,
Yeah.
thank you.
I wouldn't do less than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 questions that are not unfortunately connected. It sounds like from my understanding, it sounds like the bottleneck or the thing that you need to kind of track to is if you're going for a waiver, the SBE meeting. So how far in advance for like a May SBE meeting do you need to get your materials to them in order for them to consider the waiver? Is it like before 72 hours, or is it like 3 months?
I don't know when the very last moment to submit is, but we've always tried to get it a couple months before.
A couple months.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And then since we're talking about 2 different properties, this may not be necessary, but like if the committee is moving faster on one than the other, is it appropriate, and are we able to get kind of 2 separate reports so that we're able to kind of move one separately?
First time I've been asked that question, and I'm trying to think how the statute is written, and it says report singular, so if we're going really specific to the letter of the law, it's one report. I think theoretically you could do them in 2 separate reports.
Okay.
I don't think that would violate the spirit of the law.
Yeah, because we may have different answers from them on what they suggest, right? We definitely will in terms of what the proposed use and whatever are.
Yeah.
But okay, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah, you could keep the committee going on the one property and submit the report for the other one. Yeah, good work. Okay, any other questions? All right. So yes, at any point along the way, you can accept or reject all the way up until the final moment that you get the actual agreement. Come on, there we go. Okay, use of proceeds. For sale, your proceeds need to go for capital outlay expenses. or maintenance that's not going to recur within a 5-year period. There's ability to put it in the general fund, but that's basically an opt-out for, I believe it's 10 years. You're opting out of
The
school
current opt-out
facilities.
is a 5-year opt-out, and that's to be able to access state aid match, which we just passed a bond earlier this week, and we know that we have access to about 39 millions of state aid match, and so we have no interest in having the waiver process to put into the general fund.
All right, that makes that simple. Let's see, so we won't go into more detail on that. All right, okay, we won't go into detail on that since we know we're not going to do an opt-out. All right, use of lease proceeds is a little bit different because that can go to the general fund. In fact, that is automatically where it would go unless you actually took action to have it go into your capital facilities fund. I do note that OPSC and the State Allocation Board have expressed in past years a difference of opinion, and they think it only applies to a lease that's under 1 year. Nobody's ever explained where they got that. It seems they've just made that up, but that's how they interpret it. So we just like to mention that just so that people know if they're going to do a lease, goes into the general fund and it's for a longer term lease. There could be a different opinion out there.
So, Councilor, you said if you sell it, it has to go to a capital fund or
Yes.
lease. Is that a legal requirement? Or
Yes. It's an education code.
It is an education code,
Yes.
which can be amended.
Which committee? And you can't waive use of funds either. Okay, so your next step, form an advisory committee. That's the step you're on today. Board resolution and release an application. And this is a repeat of what we've discussed. They'll bring you back a report or reports. And you will consider the report or reports and then instruct staff to dispose of the property in accordance. There we are. Any other questions?
Always.
Good. You guys have great questions.
So, and this is maybe a question for Mr. Cantwell. So I know we have a existing application for like our SFOC. Is that something that we could adapt for a 7-Eleven committee, or should we be making something entirely new and different for a 7-Eleven committee?
Yep, I believe we've already provided an application.
Ooh,
Yes.
neat.
So you guys are ready to roll.
Awesome. I love that. And then what's the earliest that we could do we need to agendize like getting the applications out, or is that what this does? And then we would approve the committee itself within, it sounds like we want it to be at least open for a month. So end of the year or the first meeting in January, is that like a reasonable timeline?
Yes.
Okay.
Were you going to say yes to?
Yeah.
Let the record show.
I don't want to disagree
Let the
with you.
He's nodding, viewers at home. He's nodding. She took my last question.
Can I just say one final thing?
Yes.
You want to grab this? If I may, just a final note, again, I know our local media covers our board meetings well, and so as they recap this, or for those watching at home, by no means has the board given direction to staff, nor does staff have a in belief or a directive to actually think that this is going to result in the sale of the CDS property or of our parking lot. This is simply a statutory first step, a legal first step for us to just be able to even consider what potential uses there are for this property. And so it's also a way for us to actually engage the community in that process rather than for us to do it strictly at the district office. So I don't want anyone to see that the formation of this committee is suggesting a foregone foregone conclusion that there will be a sale or a lease of that property. It may remain a district asset for educational purposes for the foreseeable future. But in order for us to really be able to have the flexibility to get community feedback and explore all options, this is a necessary step.
Thank you for that clarification. And thank you for the presentation.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
I think for most of us on the board, perhaps this is the first time we'll be going through this. At least, well, I'll just speak for myself, for me. So having that much detail is really helpful in my understanding of it in a holistic way. So thank you for that.
I haven't gone through any property sale
Oh,
either, and I've been here a little bit of time.
a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Do we need to wait on the public hearing since we're ahead of schedule and go to 12B? And come back?
Yes, I think we do. So thank you for that. We will move to 12B, as you so accurately stated. Adoption of Resolution 12 concerning funding of child development programs for fiscal year 2025-2026 as presented. May I have a motion and a second? Moved by Ms. Ponser-Kamkar, seconded by Ms. Tabbitt. Any discussion? Mr. Knapke, did you have anything you wanted to present?
I just want to share with the board that Resolution 12 is a contract with the California Department of Education for $397,566,000, and that would be for the years 25-26 school year. So it's way ahead of schedule. We're a year ahead of time.
Can you share a little bit about why we're doing this a year ahead of schedule?
Because this is how they send out the agreements, a year ahead of time.
Okay.
So 12B is for the 3 through 5-year-old program at Washington Children's Center, and then 12C is for school age,
Okay.
which is at Washington and Hart. And that is for a different amount of money, and I'm not sure you want me to talk about it right now.
Let's wait till we get to
Okay.
it, but then I'd love for you to talk about it.
Sure.
So you said 12B was Washington, and 12C was Hart and Washington. Okay. School age. Okay, thank you. Does the board have any follow-up questions? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0. 12C, adoption of Resolution 13 concerning funding of child development programs for fiscal year 2025-2026 as presented. May I have a motion and a second? Moved by Ms. Ponser-Kamkar, seconded by Dr. Agakanian. Mr. Knapik. Dr. Knapik.
And so 12C is once again a contract with the California Department of Education, and this is for $744,138, and this is for the school age program, elementary school at Bret Harte and at Washington.
Great. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0. We will move on to 12D, second reading and approval of revisions to Board Policy 5131.8, mobile communication devices. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Ponser-Kamkar, seconded by Dr. Agakanian. Discussion. Dr. Macias?
Dr. Macias. Well, so I think this looks great.
Yes, as do I.
And I didn't see any substantial changes from the guidance that we gave last meeting or that you kind of talked about last meeting, but.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the plan for communicating this out to our community and implementation and like timeline for implementation?
So we have not gotten the details in the weeds in terms of a communication plan, but we are going to be working with student services. We're definitely going to be working with our school sites and principals, most importantly, and our PTA groups. It's got to be a unified effort and approach. In terms of implementation and timeline, once this is passed and accepted, it's immediate. However, we have some parent education bits and information. We do have to work with our school sites. We can't do it without that piece. So I'm willing to hear more guidance and advice from you all and our district staff to further discuss.
I think realistically speaking, if we're going to do the parent communication piece, that's probably going to need to be multiple sessions. So I think that what we can do is put all the pieces in place so that it will start the beginning of second semester. We might be able to accelerate that a little bit, but I don't think I can get it off the ground anytime before the 15-week mark. And at that point, I'm not sure whether or not it's beneficial to do it.
I mean, I think it seems like a natural landing spot to do it. And we don't have to talk about it necessarily at this meeting, although we can, which is the ways in which we'll be communicating to parents. So I think, obviously, we know there's going to be emails that get sent out, but in what ways are we going to make sure that we're really, are they also going to come from principals? Are we going to be offering sort of any kind of like town hall, virtually or in person? I think, so the sort of larger view of it, I would love to talk a little bit more about.
Why don't we put a plan together and bring it back to the board?
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I know that Dr. Knappich mentioned, like, we've got draft letters to parents and teachers and
FAQs.
Anybody else? We've got
Translated.
Yeah,
Got
everything's
everything.
translated. I think in addition to the, if we do like a Zoom town halls and in-person town halls, any of that kind of stuff, that if we could make sure that there's something that can kind of like live past that, that's maybe like very short, right? That just says like, here is high level what the policy is. It's out of sight and you won't have a problem. It's like, this is what the, like.
Sure, we can
literally,
cut that down
like, yeah,
shorter
like-
so that it's a bullet point, so that it's easier to access and just hit the highlights of the big pieces, which is what I think the parents are really going to want. So we can do that. A lot of that footwork has already been done. The time-consuming part is being able to hold a parent town hall virtually for so many different schools. So I feel like we might be able to get a few schools at a time with specific dates, like your date is here, and you can chime into the Zoom, and then we can do it to make sure that all our schools have access.
I mean, and we could also do it by elementary,
By grade
middle, and
span,
high. So that could also be a way to do it, and maybe offer 2 dates total for each, as opposed to trying to hit all the school sites. That just seems like a lot of work for district staff.
I just
want to
don't
be
know
mindful.
how many. I don't know how many people I can include in a Zoom. It's 500.
Yeah.
And we have capacity. But we're going to lean on our school sites to see what works best for them in terms
Absolutely.
of communication, coffee
Absolutely.
with principals, you name it. We're going to explore all those options.
Yeah, and I know that we said great things about Burbank High's pilot. And so just understanding how they got the word out to families and to students. And I think let's borrow from them liberally if we can, especially for boroughs, obviously, but generally speaking, and just see like what was effective there.
Principal Narne Barzagar has been communicating with Principal Knoop. They're collaborating, they're sharing best practices. They're even offering from Burbank High teachers to go visit John Burroughs High
that's
School
great.
and their faculty and share. So they're definitely collaborating.
And just so that the public is aware, if you didn't miss it last time, John Burroughs High School will be implementing the same pilot that Burbank High has been doing since the beginning of the year. They will begin in the spring, and then we'll make a determination for the high school at the end of the year based on how the pilot goes.
How have we had any sort of feedback from campus supervisors and yard supervisors in regards to any anxiety about taking phones or feeling like there's going to be pushback? Great,
No, not at all.
great.
Yeah, I think that.
It's really fallen on the shoulders of the classroom teacher, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think
From
that
what
there's
I've
a
heard.
level of authority that teachers sort of get automatically that I think sometimes, and this is not appropriate behavior, that isn't extended to other adults on campus and really should be. And so I want to make sure
Right.
that they're being treated with the same level of respect and authority as the other adults that that our students interact with on the daily basis.
Yeah, I would definitely suggest that we try to figure out a time to meet with them on it, or
Yeah.
just like show them that we're supporting them on this. I'm just thinking about, since at the elementary level it's supposed to be bell to bell, but at least at my kids' school, like their backpacks are right outside the door, and so that might be an interesting opportunity for a child to not be part of policy when their teacher does not have eyeballs on them, but that a campus supervisor might. Right, and so I want the campus supervisors and yard supervisors to know that we're behind them on this, because I know that it will make a difference. So
totally understand, and I think that we're on the same page with all of that.
Yeah. And thank you for how much work everybody's done, the whole team. I know this is a heavy lift, and we're doing something that most districts are not doing. So we don't have a lot of places to look at and model. So thanks to Ms. Ponser Kamkar for really pushing this and for everyone doing the work.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. This is exciting, and we
It
like,
is really
didn't have-
exciting.
I feel like it's a testament to the fact that staff did a really great job doing outreach on this.
Yes.
To parents and to staff. That we've been really clear about what our goal has been on this the whole time. That we've talked to principal. Like I feel like we've really done the community outreach work on this because we don't have anybody here. Yelling at us, which, sometimes no news is good news. In this particular case, while I would love for the community to come and say, thank you for doing this, and I think they'll get there, the fact that they're not really fighting against us on this, I think, is just a testament to the fact that you guys have done the work.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Surprisingly, I've been getting emails saying that they're very grateful for doing this and saying thank you. And that doesn't surprise me with elementary, but I've gotten those emails from high school parents, which does surprise me.
Yeah.
And it just makes me feel that we're going in the right direction.
Go team.
Thank you.
We still have 10 minutes, so we'll move to 12E. Do we need to vote on it? We didn't vote on it. We're going to vote on it right now. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0. Now go team. Thank you. 12E, approval of school-connected independent 501c3 organizations for 2024, 2025 as presented. May I have a motion and a second? Moved by Ms. Tabbitt, seconded by Dr. Agakanian. Any discussion?
Thank you for grabbing these two.
Yeah.
It's important. We're good.
And this is the remainder.
This is
We
it,
have
right?
not gotten others.
Okay.
This is it.
Great. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0. 12F, approval of early separation notification incentive for any Burbank Teacher Association members who choose to retire or separate at the end of the 2024-2025 school year as presented. Moved by Ms. Tabbitt, seconded by Ms. Ponser Kamkar. Any discussion? No. Mr. Chanko, could you just explain to the public a little bit? I think often there's a misunderstanding that this is intended to force people out, and it is certainly not that. Could you talk a little bit about what this is?
Sure. Thank you. This is just an opportunity. We're doing enrollment and projections at this time period. So this knowing who's staying and who's going helps us with those projections. It helps us get a jump on our staffing so we can get out there early for hiring and making sure we're the first people getting the best people for our positions as we move into the following school year.
Thank you. And usually if a teacher is going to retire, they know by now what they're going to do at the end of the year.
And so is the deadline for this is January 31st?
Yeah, the deadline is January 15th.
15th, got it.
So
That's what we did last year?
About that, I think it was January 19th,
Okay,
to
got
be
it.
exact, but around the same time period. And this just gives us, like I said, an opportunity to really know what's going on in our staffing. And we had about, I think, 18 teachers last year that took advantage of it. So
Great.
Thank you.
It puts us, I think, in a better position at the end
For
of
sure.
the year, right? We're
Yeah,
not
for sure.
surprised, we're
Right, it
not.
puts us, exactly, it's so that we know, we have a clearer understanding. There's still people that retired afterwards that, maybe weren't sure, but at least the people that know, they do kind of know, and it's an incentive, helps us.
Good job.
Thank you. Okay then, any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0. We're still a little bit before public hearing, so we will move to the consent agenda. I need a motion and a second to approve items 13B through 13E and 13G through 13U as presented and 13F as amended.
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Agakanian. Seconded by Ms. Tabbitt. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0. Oh my God. Board reports. Ms. Tabbitt.
Well, it's that time of year, homecoming. Burbank and Burroughs both did a fabulous job, I think, for their homecoming activities. It's a lot on teachers, I think, this week. So thank you to all of our secondary, right, high school principals. It's a lot.
It's a lot, because you're tired right now.
Yeah, and then, grades and things are coming due, and anyway, thank you to our staff members who, for some kids, those activities, those sports are why they come to school every day. So thank you for making it extra special and going above and beyond. I appreciate it. I know our community appreciates it. The kids do too, even though they might forget to tell you, but they have a great time. So behavior, I think, unless I don't know, haven't heard something, was great at the football game. That's always a tough one between Burbank and Burroughs. Congratulations to both teams for playing a great game and having a good time, I hope. Yeah, so it was a good week. I'm sorry I missed one of my favorite events, but you got rained on at Night of Magic? Just a little bit. Just a little bit?
Good luck.
Yeah, I hope you both had a great time. I'll be back next year. And what else? I did something else this week. Oh, I visited, State of the City. Thank you so very much. Wish we had a good time at the State of the City. Thank you. It's always great, I think, as a board member, too, to understand where our city's headed and know some of the big projects that are coming through. It helps us plan a little bit to know what's going on and hopefully have a opportunity to meet and greet folks, but also with the new construction, hopefully it will increase some numbers a few places. It's not projected to, but you never know. Those are only projections. Also, for the first time, I went to the YMCA and visited oh my gosh, I'm so terrible, the Social Impact Center, and met with Gina, who leads it. Yeah, it was a really, it's a nice space, and she has some great plans to increase the usage of that area and opportunities for folks to get involved. So not just a space for youth, but it's growing to be a space for anybody, everybody. She's going to have some morning things for older folks who maybe are retired, to come in for coffee and conversation, and other things. So it was really neat to meet her and see where she's hoping, as the transition takes place with the Y that's being taken over by the downtown YMCA, things might be going a little slower than she'd like, but it was a good experience. So that's it. Can you believe that? In 2 weeks, that's all?
Just that?
Just that.
Ms. Ponser-Kamkar.
All right. I went to lots of places too. State of the City, which was lovely. That was my first year going. But it was great to kind of hear all of the work that is going on. I think I'm trying to remember now what Dr. Knapik and I looked at each other and we had a great idea always around EV charging at parking. We'll get back to that one. That's maybe a future agenda item later. But State of the City was lovely. Thank you for inviting and recognizing the board there. I went to the Burbank Community Band concert. It was lovely as promised. My kids made it I think an extra 10 minutes than they made it the last time. So I was very proud of them. Growth. They did great until all of a sudden they did not. So there was a lot of Dr. Promo and I attended BHS Night of Magic together, where he was the only person getting rained on under the tent, from what I could tell. But it was a really lovely night. The kids are incredibly talented. I really hope that the VMA raised a lot of money. I managed to win some
kickboxing classes as part of a silent action. Oh yeah. So those will come in handy. And then the next day I went to Burroughs on Broadway, brought the kids to that too. We managed to make it all the way to intermission. I know, which was at the 2-hour mark. So, but again, incredibly talented kids. I was blown away. I went to the pop night last spring, and just, it's unbelievable what these organizations are able to put together. And then just a big thank you. I know Dr. Promo started out with kind of thanking all of our partners on the bond. The other, I definitely want to just thank the community for coming out and voting, both for the bond and then also in our new districted elections. I know that was confusing and weird for a lot of people. I feel like I took a lot of feedback from the community on the districting in particular that was, I think, thoughtfully given and received. The folks I really want to make sure that we are thanking to are Burbank Council PTA. They really did amazing work getting the word out to their units and just being incredibly helpful in advocating for why the bond was needed within kind of their framework that they work in terms of advocating for students. So really excited that I think the community was super supportive of the bond. They really understood why it's necessary and why we asked for it, and that was heartening to see. So thank you, sweet, sweet Burbank. What did I forget? Oh.
You talked about that.
Oh, it was after our last board meeting. Yes, the other thing that I went to was Dia de los Muertos, where at Disney Elementary, where I learned that I have missed a calling as a face painter. I have photo evidence of Dr. Agakanian after a face painting job by yours truly. And just, it's an amazing event. It gets better every year. I highly recommend going next year if you have never been. It is so cool. And yeah, it's unbelievable. They do such an amazing job. It's the Burbank, or the Disney PTA, Wendy DeLeon in particular, puts in hours upon hours making sure that these beautiful decorations get made, and they had Aztec dancers, it's so cool. And would love to have the community there next year. I mean, it seemed like every kid's face I was painting, I would say like, oh, do you go to this school? And they'd say, no, my friend goes to this school and they invited me here, which I just thought was the coolest thing. So I love us inviting others, within Burbank and outside of Burbank into our community. And so I think that is an opportunity for it, is even at our little elementaries when they do events. Let's make sure we shout them out. So thanks.
Dr. Agakanian.
Thank you, Madam President. I do want to kind of follow up on the Dia de los Muertos event. And thank you for the makeup. And yes, I think you're very talented. But I was invited also by my good friend Melinda Amato, who's a parent there, to go to the event. I will tell you, it was like going to an amusement park, a Disney event. The props, I mean, how organized. They even had a map. Everyone got a map. You go here, there. It felt like you were in Disneyland. I mean, no fun. There were Disney volunteers. Yeah. And they had the what did you call the dollar? They had a name. Dia dollars. Dia dollars. I still have some in my other pocket. So it was just fun and organized and for all ages. And I was walking. There was dancers. There was a guy on stilts, and it was just if you've not been to one, you should go. And I'm telling you, it has gotten better over this year. Was just like, even my kid was like, Dad, it's time to go. It's like, I don't want to leave, So great job, and you did a fantastic job, by the way. Thank you. Also, I did attend the Fall Festival for Muir as a PTA member. I want to give a shout out to Ellen Setrakian, the president of the PTA, and Kathy Bierman and all the volunteers. This was another great event. I was in charge of the game bus, that. So it's their big event annually where they raise a lot of money at Mirror for the students, and it was just fantastic. Volunteers were there. Got a little windy, but it was just a fun event, and thank you for all the volunteers and the PTA, of course, for putting this together. As my colleague said earlier, I did attend the State of the City, and I was very happy to see a lot of our, this year was, I don't know, I just noticed it, but I saw more employees from the district attending. We even had a table from Burbank High School with their career tech program, with their bio students and medical students, which I thought was fantastic. So kudos to all of our friends who attended. I also attended Home Again LA Empty Bowl, which was a great event. It's a wonderful event. You've never been to one, you should go. It really helps our families and friends out there who are facing challenges when it comes to housing insecurity, which is something that's happening as we speak, and I think that's something that we also need to take a closer look as a district, because it's a challenge for some families and even students out there. And last but not least, I did attend the Armenian National Committee of America's annual gala. It's a wonderful event. And thank you, Dr. Paramo, for bringing up the ANCA earlier. Just for clarification, the support came from the ANCA Burbank chapter, because they have chapters everywhere. So to Mr. Sarkis-Simonian and the leadership, thank you for your support. And they were out there really, talking to people about passing the bond. So thank you very much. And thank you for everyone who supported us on this. That is my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll begin with apologies. The weekend that everything happened was the weekend I got sick. So I was sad to miss Night of Magic. I was sad to miss Burroughs on Broadway, and huge apologies to Burroughs PTA for not being able to work concessions at the big game. That was a bummer. I did it last year. It was super fun. Please invite me back. Thank you as always to Monterey for letting me come visit. I got to see the SOAR program and sit down with our two wellness and behavior specialists, Elias and Juan, and hear about the work they're doing there. It's unbelievable, and we're so lucky to have that whole team. Echoing everybody else, but it needs to be said as many times, a huge thank you first to our community, not only for voting for the bond, but for being thoughtful, informed voters who took the time to do the research and not be swayed by misinformation and fear, which is really hard to avoid, especially during election season. So it speaks to people's commitment to us, and I think the kind of quality education the district provides speaks to our commitment to you, and I look forward to that relationship growing. A humongous thank you to our entire bond committee, John Acchetto, Jen Lurie, Charlene Walters, and Wendy Harvell, who also are PTA Council leadership, Christina Ballas, Shanna Warren, Barry Gasso, and Justin Worsham. I also want to give a huge thank you to our consultants, Blake Dellinger and Adam Berkowitz, and our fundraising consultant, Melody Avila. We could not have done this without their leadership, without their guidance, without the innovative way they approached getting this bond passed. They were really team players, and along with them, thank yous to BTA, to Alex and Nicole, and BTA getting out there and knocking on doors for the bond and for their thoughtful endorsement process, and to our amazing rock star parents who, took time out of their days and their schedules and time with their kids to do something they knew was important for their kids. So none of us take for granted the kind of work everyone invested, and I assure you that we'll continue to work just as hard to make sure that we use that money in meaningful ways. So we are going to bop back now to 12, where am I? B, A? 11A. That's what I thought. I was just testing everyone. Okay. It is 7:36. I am going to open the public hearing and announce that public comment is allowed for item 11A. I will now close the public hearing for item 11A. Seeing nobody here. Now we'll move on to 12A. Adoption of Resolution 11, authorizing the formation of a surplus property advisory committee, the 711 committee, pursuant to California Ed Code 17387, as presented. May I have a motion and a second? Moved by Dr. Agakanian, seconded by Ms. Ponser Kamkar. We've had lengthy discussion, but any additional discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0. Thank you very much again for such a thoughtful presentation. 12B, adoption of, did we do that? We did that. So now, we go all the way back. I do have retirements. Not my own, much to the chagrin of others. Let me find it. We don't have those, Armand. We don't. I would read them if we did. Oh, somewhere. Oh my gosh. I had them. It's one page, somewhere in the ether. Oh, you don't have them. It's there. It's 100. I saw it and then I lost it. No. It was 100% there. I just don't want the meeting to end. I found it. I put it here so I wouldn't lose it. We have, well, and this one deserves a second. So we are bidding a sad but fond farewell to the fabulous Randy Ogawa, who is retiring as trades manager. He began his service in BUSD in 2000. One of the things that and Shar can speak to this far more eloquently than I, but Randy is one of the major reasons our district functions the way that it does. He is exceptional at his job, a wonderful human being, and you probably have never met him because he's so busy working and taking care of the district and doing his job well. But he has been a huge part of Burbank Unified, and I want to express my sincere thank you. I wish I had a chance to know him and work with him longer than the few years that I did, but he is going to be sorely missed, and we hope that he enjoys his well-earned retirement. Ms. Tabbitt, anything you want to add? And anybody else?
Randy he hasn't passed away. He's
No,
still
he's
with
alive,
us.
guys. He's alive, I'm
He just
sorry.
retired. Is one of those leaders that is able to not just lead the folks he works. I don't even want to say that work under him, but because the way Randy runs things, they work alongside of him. These folks come to work every day to work for Randy because they appreciate his treatment of them and they have respect for him. And so he made a huge difference in that. It's a great way to lead folks by making those relationships matter and count. So when somebody really needs something, he has people who will stand up and say, I got you, and get it done, which only benefits our district and our students because things were taken care of, and they were taken care of expediently and in ways that hopefully didn't cost us tons of money. So he had a special skill, and yes, he will be sorely, sorely missed. And he had a great laugh too, so that was always fun.
I actually did not get a chance to say goodbye to Randy, and it was largely because he made it very clear that he did not want to leave his position with any kind of fuss. We attempted to do a few things to honor him, and he was very adamant that he didn't want them done. So I was very respectful of that, but what I would say, Randy, I hope you're watching, is that you're an amazing human being, that you inspired everyone that you worked with, not just highly competent, but very accountable. I could email you something, and within a few minutes, I would get a response back, and I would get detailed information as you work through an issue. And I'm just so appreciative, and I don't think it's going to be very easy. In fact, very difficult to be able to find someone to fill those shoes, but we'll do our best. And I hope you enjoy your retirement. You deserve it.
Dr. Agakanian.
Randy, thank you. We're going to miss you, and please enjoy your retirement. Congratulations. Thank you.
Okay. We will adjourn tonight at 7:42 p.m. We will see everybody back at our next meeting on the 21st. Meeting adjourned.